Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. My name is Daphne Worrell, Marketing Manager for ODG by MCG, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's webinar, Introducing the New ODG by MCG. During this webinar, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat feature located in the lower corner of your screen, and we'll save some time at the end for your questions. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to you within 1 week. Our presenter today is Jamie LaPaglia, Manager of Implementation and Clinical Education for ODG by MCG. Jamie has over 20 years of nursing experience, including over 10 years working with some of the largest carriers and TPAs in the workers' comp and disability industries. He is responsible for implementation and integration, helping to integrate and maximize the solutions provided by ODG by MCG, as well as building and managing strategic partnerships with other platform providers. Jamie, you can take it from here.
Thanks, Daphne. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen now. Let's see. Here we go. And we have a bit of an intimate group today, so hoping everything goes well. If you guys remember, if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to enter it in your system there. And again, as Daphne mentioned, at the end, we will provide an opportunity to address those questions and the feedback you may have. So you should be at the other button here. So you should see my screen now. This is the ODG by MCG platform. This is the newer platform for ODG, and we hope for most of you, you'll feel it's a little bit of an easier experience, easier to navigate, a little bit more easier to consume. This is the home page. This is kind of where everything starts, if you will. So ODG has taken an approach to kind of make things very user-friendly, sort of a top-down approach where we sort of provide the most high-value information up front, but allow the user to sort of drill down and get more specific information to the extent they need. We've done this by sort of grouping everything by medical topics. This allows users that are not, it could be either clinical or non-clinical, and yet you still could find information you're looking for without having to, again, be an expert in coding or billing or any of that good stuff. So what I mean is, if you look here on the home page, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here in the middle section here. I like to call this the shortcut section. And you'll see here we have the return to work diagnoses, and you see some conditions here. We have medical treatments. We even have this top conditions here. So if one of the conditions you're looking for doesn't happen to be in this shortcut section here, you can actually click on these little binoculars and find even more conditions. Keep in mind you can search for any of these without having to click on it. This is, again, just a bit of a shortcut. For instance, if I was looking for information on, say, an ankle fracture, I simply click on ankle fracture here. It's going to pin it to the top, as you can see here, and show me the duration, the disability and return to work durations, the referential content, the risk score, and so on for an ankle fracture. And we'll go into this more in just a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of show you how easy it is to find the information you're looking for. Now, going back to the information I was talking about, medical topics, right, grouping all those things into a medical topic. The best way to explain that is if you look at some of these conditions here, one of the best examples, in my opinion, is the broken arm, right? There really is no such thing as a broken arm, right? A broken arm is really a fractured humerus, a fractured radius, a fractured ulna, fractured ulna. But a lot of folks may not know that you know, an ulna is even a bone in your body, or that it's a bone in your arm, right? So we've kind of grouped it into broken arms. So again, you can find information very quickly, very easily. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a clinician. With that said, you do have the ability to search by fractured ulna, by the ICD code, or any of that good stuff as well. So it's really built on the user experience. We may make it, again, as easy as possible while still allowing the granularity that you may need should you choose so. So if you did want to choose to search by, instead of these sort of quote-unquote medical topics, like a broken arm, you could search by various types of codes. You can see here I have ICD-9 codes, ICD-10 codes. If you're looking for a particular treatment, we have CPT codes. A drug, of course, we use the NDC codes. And then your HCPC codes, which is something we recently added to the TAO. Again, an additional enhancement. We're always looking towards product development, bringing in new information, new content. That's something we actually brought in more recently, where it's sort of an expansion. In case you don't know, HCPC codes are typically used for DME equipment, medical supplies, and such. So you have the ability now to as well not only search for CPT, but as well as HCPCs. So just an example of some of the things we talked about. Again, we talked about we can use a shortcut. If I wanted to search for broken arm, like I did the ankle fracture, I simply click on it. You can see with one click, I get the information at my fingertips. But again, I can also search by some of the other things I talked about, like ICD-10 code. I can simply type in a code now, S33.5. I can search by the actual condition. I can search for treatment. So you can see the search is very intuitive and very easy to use, and that was our goal, is really to make this a very easy user experience. The other thing you can sort of do as a shortcut, you'll see, is you have this diagram of a human body. Each one of these little orange circles, if you will, we call them nodes, represents a body system. So if you're familiar with the legacy system, this would be the same thing as sort of a chapter. So what I mean is, if you're looking for a treatment for a particular type of injury, let's say that you have someone that has a low back injury. Well, if you come over here and you see this one is for a low back, and you don't have to memorize each one. If you take your mouse and hover over them, they'll tell you what the body system is for that particular circle or node. So again, if I have someone with a back injury, I simply click on that one for the back. It's going to open up the treatment tab and show me all the treatments for someone with a back injury, as you can see here. So that's the bit of the shortcut section. The only other piece I didn't show you is this medical treatment, and it's really similar to the human body figure here, and that these are shortcuts to treatment summaries. So again, if you have, maybe you're doing utilization review, or you're a treating provider, and you're trying to determine what is the guidelines for maybe a hip replacement. If you simply click on that entry, it'll again bring you to the treatment tab. It'll pin that to the top, and it'll give you a treatment guideline for hip replacement. So you can see how quick it is to get the information that you need. Now, the whole layout of the website is sort of tabular. What I mean is, you can see each one of our solutions is laid out in a different tab. To navigate to the different tabs, all you need to do is simply click on it. It'll bring you to that tab, and you can start searching for particular information in that area. Or, as you saw what I started with, is I can just search from the Home tab, and it'll show me whether there's content in any one of the tabs. So what I mean, if I search for back sprain, I see there's content in the Durations tab, in the Tau Index, and in the Cost tab. So it's letting me know where that information lies for that search term that I use, in this case, back sprain. And again, I can see them here, right? So we have duration, we have Tau, and we have cost. So if I perhaps wanted the cost projection for someone with a back sprain, I would simply click on the back sprain below that cost tab. So you'll see I click on it. Whenever you click on a result, it's going to, again, pin it to the top. You'll hear me say that a lot. What I mean is it adds it in a little green box here, and that'll let me know that whatever information I'm looking at represents that item or items. And I say items because you can actually pin more than one item. You can pin several items, in fact. So I'll go ahead and I'll try carpal tunnel now, just to show you the functionality that you could actually have more than one condition here. And again, it automatically updates that information for me, depending on what's pinned to the top there. Now, to navigate the site, again, you're just going to simply click on the tabs that you want to go to next. So if I was in the cost tab and maybe I wanted to see the duration, the return to work durations for these conditions, all I do is simply click on the durations tab. It'll bring me there and show me again that information for those conditions. Now, if I wanted to remove one of these, simply just click on that. You'll see each one has a little X. These little X's here. I'm just going to remove, let's remove back sprain for now. So I'll remove back sprain. You're going to see that that information automatically updates now, and now these durations and risk score and so on is just for carpal tunnel syndrome. There's some information if you ever wanted to in the help and training section. You can see we actually have a self-paced video tutorial. This is extremely helpful if you wanted to say maybe brush up on a particular section, or you wanted to kind of do a demo of the whole site. You can just click Start Course and go through section by section. Or again, if you wanted to see just a particular section, simply just click on that section. For instance, maybe we want to see cost again. I click on cost, and it gives me a short little demo of that site. You'll see each of these videos is relatively short. I think the longest one is a little over 4 minutes. Again, ranging from 2 to 4 minutes. So very high level, but a great resource for knowledge if you're looking to brush up on a particular section. Some of the other things that we have here are the ODG certification. So once you feel confident and you know in navigating and using ODG well, feel free to take the ODG certification. It's a great sort of tool to demonstrate your mastery of the knowledge. It's great for demonstrating to employers and to clients that you do know ODG well and therefore can apply the evidence-based approach to your claims. There's an ODG help desk. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns at any point, you can always feel free to reach out to us. I think that's one of the things that separates us from others is that we are very responsive to our customers. We're very pro-customer. We want to make sure we're meeting your needs, and we're always looking towards future product development. So if you have any ideas, if you have any feedback, you know, if it could just do this, it'd be so much better, or why does it do that? I'm not really sure. All those kind of things, we're always eager to hear from you. Well, of course, we always like to hear the good feedback. That constructive feedback is invaluable, so please feel free to share that. And then lastly is information and guides. So information and guides, you'll see there's some PDF job aids here. I'm not going to go through each one, but just to show you they are available if you wanted to use them. So maybe the videos aren't your sort of preferred learning style. We do have them in written sort of, again, PDF format where it goes through each one of the sections, highlighting each tool, section of the tool, what it means, how to use it, all that good stuff. So again, that's available in Help and Training under Information and Guide. There's a few more things that you can look at, whether it's suggesting changes, reaching out to the editorial advisory board. Maybe there's a treatment that we don't have, or maybe you have access to additional research that may not align well with what we currently have. It's unlikely, but it's certainly possible. So we give that option to you that if you do wanted to send that in, we're always happy to look at it. Well, particularly for the advisory board, you wouldn't be able to speak to them directly, and that's, of course, to maintain that credibility, but you certainly can submit stuff to them. And then lastly is this methodology document. Again, I won't go through it. It's 119 pages last time I was in here. So it's an extensive resource of knowledge. But if you ever were curious sort of how do we grade ourselves, or not even ourselves, right? How are we graded by independent studies? What kind of information do we look at? How do we look at information? What do we include? What don't we include? All that good stuff is in this document here. So again, I'm not going to go through it today. Just to kind of, I'll just show you 2 pages from here, just to kind of give you a sort of a idea of the scope of stuff that we look at. So in this slide right here, you can see how much information every year that we look at to really make sure that the information we're presenting to you is valid, that it's current, it's most up to date. You can see we look at almost 300,000 abstracts every year. So it's a lot of information we look at to, again, make sure that you have the most up-to-date and valid information so that we're making sure our patients have the right treatment at the right time and the right setting by the right provider. And then last thing, this is how we rank our studies. We want to make sure there's a clear line of sight into how we rank and score and all that good stuff. So this is based on the treatment guidelines. So you can see there's 11 rankings. 1 is the highest rank, 11 is the lowest rank. So the higher the ranking, the stronger the study. And then there's quality of study. We have A, B, and C. A is high, B is medium, C is low. So of course a 1A would be the strongest evidence, the highest ranked study. That's the one that's the most relevant. So it's the strongest type of information we can use to make an evidence-based decision, all the way down to an 11C, which would be the lowest rank and the lowest quality, but it's enough that we can use it based on the evidence-based approach. So again, I'm not going to go into many more of that. Just wanted to let you know it was there if you ever wanted to look at it on your own. And then down here are the guidelines by state. If you do the utilization review or you're in that sort of realm, if you will, this is a really useful tool. When I did UR back in the days, many years ago, it was always a challenge, right? When you do a state for a long time, you know the requirements. It's really easy, but maybe you're covering for a coworker, or maybe you're new to that state and you're not really sure. This is a great resource. What it's going to do is bring you to this sort of visual of a sort of map, and you can look at each state, and it lets you know, do they have their own guidelines? Have they adopted ODG? Any information around that, it'll give you at a quick glance. And again, like I said, the approach is give you the highest value information up front, then allow you to drill down if needed. So what I mean is, let's say, I don't know, like New York has their own treatment guidelines, or even Colorado, right? Colorado has their own treatment guidelines. So if you wanted to, you can click on Colorado, and it'll tell you if they have their own, that they do. They have state treatment guidelines. And if you even wanted to see, it gives you a link to the treatment guidelines for that state. So each state that has their own treatment guidelines, it'll link out to those guidelines for you. So again, you're not having to search for them. You're not trying to find them. Here they are for you at your fingertips. I'm going to go back to the home page. So that's it for the home page. What we're going to do now is we're going to go into the duration. And there's really sort of 3 main domains that ODG kind of covers, and they're all really tightly intergrouped together. What I mean is recovering return to work or disability durations, recovering medical treatments, and recovering costs. The idea being when someone is injured and it's resulting from decline in function or time away from work, we want to be able to provide guidance into what is the typical time for that and what is the goal, what is the target, right? And we know, so that's the duration. And we know that the quicker we get someone back to work, the better the outcome. And how do we do that? Well, with appropriate treatments. So that's how we start with durations, then we go to treatments. And the treatments are whether it be the formulary, the TAU, or the treatment tab, where we're giving you guidance on evidence-based summaries. Again, making sure they get the right treatments at the right time. That's the treatment. And then lastly is the cost, right? Because we know the longer they're out of work, the higher the cost. The more inappropriate treatments, the higher the cost. So that, as you can see, they all kind of play together, and these are really sort of the three domains that ODG really helps manage. So with that being said, let's go into the durations. And for today's, I'll just go ahead and pick backspring just to get us in there. Remember, when I click on a result, it's going to pin it to the top. And now I'm in the durations tab. And the two the main focus of the duration, obviously, is the duration. And in this sort of view, I have two. I have the A value and the B value. Now, there is some configurability. ODG prides itself on being able to be very highly configurable and customizable, meaning within the functions we have, we can certainly customize this and configure it to your liking. Some folks have an additional value there. They have the M value, which stands for the maximum anticipated return to work time. Then they have the A and the B, of course. We can hide certain tabs if you wanted. So going back to the durations, though, the A and the B, right? So the A value is the average for a typical claim for this condition. So what I mean is right now, the only thing I told the system was a back sprain. So what it's telling me is that for a claim for a back sprain that results in time out of work, it's typically 19 days to get that person back to work, right? So that's the average. Now, I say typical because what it's doing is it's removing those top 5%, the top 5% outliers. It's taking them away, and it's showing me the mean, the average of the remaining 95% of the claim. So this is sort of your typical real-world average for this condition. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, that's great, Jamie, but there's no way someone's getting back to work for a back sprain that's out of work in 19 days. Most of my claims are, 20, 30 or more. And you'd be right. And the reason is because right now I didn't tell the system anything other than a back sprain. So I like to call this sort of a condition-based duration. And we don't treat conditions, right? We treat people. So to make this sort of claimant-specific or patient-specific, I would need to tell the system some information about the claim I'm working with. And to do that, you just click on this little refine button here. And you'll see I have some additional options open up. And now instead of a back sprain, I have a particular claimant with a back sprain. By defining who that claimant is, it'll refine the duration. And so I'll do that in a second, but I just want to keep going down the road of the durations, just kind of further explain these a little bit more. So we talked about the average being the typical claim. The M value I mentioned a little bit, that's the maximum, right? So what that really is the average of all claims. So it'll be at the 100th percentile. And then the best practice. So while the average is based on real claim data, so we have over 10 million claims from partners of ours that share their de-identified claim data. We aggregate all that data, and then we synthesize it and present it to you in a very easy-to-see A-B method. So I know that the industry, the average for this type of claim is 19 days. The best practice, however, removes all the outliers. What I mean is all those extrinsic factors, all those sort of issues with their job, issues with family, issues with maybe they're going through divorce, or maybe they're caring for a loved one who's ill or has a chronic or terminal condition. All those things that don't really necessarily impact the recovery of the injury, but do impact return to work. So a lot of folks now are talking about social determinants of health, or the biopsychosocial model. All those extrinsic, psychological, psychosocial, all those other things really do impact durations. And you're going to have all those in this A value. But the B value removes all those things and says strictly from a physiological perspective, what is the duration? And that should be your goal. That should be your target, right? So the B value is the target or the goal return to work time frame. So if you following this, you'll see that we're really moving from A towards B. A is current state, B is the future or the goal. That's what we're trying to shoot for. So with all that being said, we kind of talked about A is the average based on actual claim data. B is sort of synthesized from that. In case anyone's curious, it's sort of based on the modified Delphi approach. We actually have over 100 physician consultants in multiple specialties. They get together, they review the durations, and again, through that modified Delphi approach, synthesizes B value for you. So again, all this is based on a condition. We want to make this based on a claimant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one more tab here. I'm going to have to open them side by side just so you can see the impact of adding that information. Where this one, we don't have that information. We have just a back sprain. I'm going to use that same back sprain, but this one I'm going to add claimant level information, right? I'm going to add some information about who has the back sprain. The first thing, and probably the most important thing I can add, is what is the job, right? So a lot of this has to do with returning folks back to work. Well, it's kind of hard to return someone back to work if you don't know what they do for work, right? So the first thing we want to do is tell the system what do they do for work, whether it be a job title or a job class. You'll see each one of these job classes is defined for you if you take your mouse and hover over it. Or again, like I said, you can enter the job title. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a registered nurse. When you click on that job title, it's going to tell you what the job class is. And it's already going to start changing those durations, right? So you remember, we started at 19 and 10. And when I added the job title, it's already started changing because now we're at 29 and 19. So now instead of someone with a back sprain, we have a registered nurse with a back sprain. I'm going to keep going, right? So let's add some more information. So I can add the state. I can add the age. Add the age. Now, the date of entry won't impact the durations, but it will give you that target return to work date. So I'm going to add, let's just put March 1st. The minute I add March 1st, it's going to take the number of days for best practice and give me that target, that goal, right? For claim type, again, we talked about having over 10 million claims. That's actually a mixture of OC and non-OC, so work comp and disability type of claims. If you wanted to just base it on a certain type of claim, you certainly can do that. Simply just click on the claim type and just change it from any to either work comp or disability. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as any, so it's a sort of combination of all of it. And then lastly, I have these confounding factors, which many will see. Most of these are sort of comorbid conditions. Keep in mind, you're not limited to these. But these are just happen to be the most common ones. So I'll go ahead and say that this registered nurse in California, 55-year-old registered nurse from California, is a diabetic, obese, and has hypertension. So if you recall, when we started, we had 19 and 10 for a back sprain. We had the same back sprain, but now because we said it's not just a back sprain, it's a 55-year-old registered nurse in California who has diabetes, is obese, and has hypertension, you can see what it does to those durations. So it almost tripled the average and a little over 2.5 times, or almost 2.5 times the best practice. So what it's saying is this type of claimant with a back sprain typically takes about 2 months to get back to work, though should be able to return to work in about 3 to 4 weeks. Again, my goal then is to move from the average towards the best practice. No, I may not hit the best practice, and that's okay. It's not necessarily meant to be hit every time, but it gives me a goal mark. It gives me the sort of where I want to shoot for. So if I got this person back to work in 30 or 35 or even 40 days, then job well done. I was able to reduce the typical duration and move it towards the best practice. Now you can see there's some other things here that you can add, some other confounding factors. And I said you're not limited to these. So let's say this person had maybe, I don't know, arthritis. Well, I don't see arthritis here. No problem. I can just add it up here. So in this case, I'll just add osteoarthritis. I'll say they have it of the hip, or let's do knee, because it's right there. So you can see I was able to add that, and of course that does impact the durations quite significantly. So again, the more information you give the system, the better information the system gives you. So I'm just going to remove that. And what I want to do is next is show you about this risk score here. And the risk score is a great tool because it gives you a quick snapshot. Remember, high value information very quickly right up front. That's what the risk score is. What it's telling me is what's the likelihood that this person will go back to work in the expected duration. So in this case, it's highly unlikely. The higher the risk, the less unlikely. The lower the risk, the more likely, right? So what it's really saying is what's the difference between a good outcome and a bad outcome? The higher the risk, the less likely you're going to have a good outcome, the more likely you're going to have a bad outcome. And for those that are interested, the risk score is sort of made up of 2 components. Not so, you certainly don't have to memorize this, but I think it's good to have an understanding of the foundation for it. So the 2 components is magnitude and volatility. Magnitude really says if we start at 0, the higher we go up from 0, the higher the magnitude. That's really looking at this A value. And again, the higher this number, the more costly the claim is going to be, the longer the durations are going to be, the more possibility of a complication or some sort of other red flag. So that magnitude is, again, based on the average. With the higher the number, the higher the magnitude. And the second piece is volatility. And that just says, what's the difference between the average and the best practice, right? So the wider the gap between these 2 numbers, the more volatile the claim is and the more risk that's there. But then you can also look at it as the more volatile, the more opportunity you have. That's why I really feel that sort of volatility is really, really important, because everyone knows certain claims. Like if I told you you had pancreatic cancer or you have major fracture or something, well, obviously it's going to be a long-term claim. You're going to have a longer duration. But what's really helpful is when I look at these simple back sprain ones, sometimes we think should be simple, but when you look at it, actually look at the high risk because there's a wide volatility. There's a lot of variation between sort of a good outcome, and potentially bad outcome. So those sort of quote-unquote creeper claims are really important to identify early. The last thing we want to do is be reactive. We don't want to sort of jump on that case once it's already too late. Once you've already sort of exceeded that average, it's going to be a lot harder to get them back to work. So being proactive, identifying from the beginning of that claim that, hey, this claim is likely to have some challenges, we can then assign the right resources to this, assign it to our more experienced staff, and then use all those other tools in our toolbox, i.e. case management, peer review, IME, SE, all those different things that we use every day. This just gives us a clue as to the likelihood that we should use that and what's the chances of them having sort of a complication. So again, that risk score is extremely helpful. The other thing you may have noticed is sort of a little visual timeline here. It gives a great little snapshot where we sort of lie in the whole scheme of things. It says today I'm at day 11, tells me when I should be starting to pursue that release to return to work, gives me that best practice time frame, and that average over here. So it gives me a nice little snapshot. I can also click on print, and then click on print page. And again, now I create a PDF document that I can share. It gives me whatever conditions I have, those durations, risk score, only the variables I entered, of course. So you see it does a nice job of giving me, again, a snapshot that I can share with maybe employers or other stakeholders. Now, some often ask, is this duration for full duty release? Is this for a full duty return to work? And the answer is it really kind of depends. What I mean by that is if you entered the full duty job, then yes, it's for full duty return to work. If you did not enter a job here, then it's no, right? Because it wouldn't know what the full duty job is, so it wouldn't be able to tell you what the duration is unless it knew what the job was. So same thing could be said if you're trying to know what the modified duration would be, like how long before I can get this person back to a modified job. Well, it's the same thing. You could either use these scenarios down here, and see some of them say modified here. So this has two because it's either a mild sprain or severe sprain. And that's the really great thing about the scenarios is it really adds that human intervention. So at the end of the day, the guideline is just a guideline. It's something that a human has to use as a tool to make informed decisions. So this guideline just gives you the information to make those informed decisions. That human intervention is really the most critical part of the guideline. So these scenarios allow that human intervention because it says, you know what, not all sprains are equal, right? We have mild sprains, we have severe sprains. Maybe we're trying to get them back to full duty, to light or modified duty. So these kind of help you do that. So again, if I had a severe sprain, I want someone to get back to sort of modified work, well, I can click on this one. If I had a severe sprain, I'm trying to get them back to sort of a heavy job, like the one we have now, well, then I can refine it too. It's either mild or heavy. I would click on heavy. And when I do that, you see what happens. It changes that goal from 24 to 35. Because now I said it's not just any sprain, it's a severe sprain. Again, adding that human intervention. The other thing we were talking about just a second ago is the fact that we can use this to sort of gauge modified duty return, talking about that whatever is here is what we're returning to. So if we're trying to get someone back to some sort of light duty position, instead of having registered nurse there, we can simply just take this and change it to maybe a sedentary job. Or if we know the actual job name that they're going to go back to, we can put that job name as well. What that does is now instead of giving me the full duty return durations, it's giving me a modified or light duty duration. So instead of 24 days, it's saying, hey, if you want to get someone back to a sedentary job as they continue to recover, you can typically do that in about a week or 6 days to be specific. Going down a little bit further, again, I talked about grouping medical topics. Right now we have a back sprain. So if you wanted to see all the ICD codes that sort of roll up into this topic, you can see all of them here. So we have ICD-9 and ICD-10. We know that a lot of our users still do retrospective reviews or might still have some clients of theirs that have ICD-9s for whatever reasons. We offer both. We also offer some guidance on recommendations for activity modifications, right? So these are your modified duty or full duty with restrictions. This gives you some guidance there. Then we also give you some high-level info on PT and Chiro. Now, this is not for every condition, of course, but for especially the musculoskeletal ones, it will give you that snapshot, give you a quick glance of what you should be expecting. We know, again, when we start this sooner, we tend to have better outcomes. So we don't want you to have to go digging to find information. We put it right there in front of you so you can get that ball started, get that ball rolling, if you will. The other thing I think is really great is this copy URL feature. Let's see if I can do this real quick. You know what? What I mean is if in your claim system where you're documenting your notes, you can take this URL and paste it there. Then when you come back into the claim 2 weeks later, a month later, 2 months later, whatever it may be, instead of going back into ODG and typing everything from scratch again, you can just simply copy out that URL, paste it in a web browser, and voila, you're right back to where you started from the last time during that claim, right? So in this case, we have it back to that sedentary job. We have the date of injury, all those confounding factors. It's exactly how it was when I was last in it. So it's the closest thing you can do to staging your work, if you will, because when you enter anything into ODG, we do not capture any data. There's no transmission from your end to our end. So this is the closest thing you can do to save it, but it works very well. Not only to save your data, if you will, but also maybe it's your supervisors, maybe it's your QA or audit staff. They can sort of see what you saw when you made your strategy or your plan of action. They can see how you came up with that action and make sure you're following best practices. Or if you're the supervisor or QA, again, you could do that. You can make sure that your team, wherever you're monitoring, is following your protocols, following your best practices, making sure they're doing what you've trained them to do. Because then you can see exactly what they saw when they made that decision. Next, I want to show you is the durations are great. But at the end of the day, they're just a number. It's how we use that number that's important. So what we recommend is using that number is, of course, managing that return to work process. I like to explain it sort of like a three-step process. The first step is identify and set expectations early in the claim. So let's go right back just real quick. I'll put in that registered nurse again. So again, we have that 55-year-old registered nurse from California that sustained a back sprain. So when we first get that claim, we're going to set expectations with all the stakeholders, especially the claimant and the treating provider, and say, hey, you know, based on guidelines, we're going to try to shoot for a return to work time frame of 3 to 4 weeks. Do you see any barriers to that? You know, again, there's multiple studies out there that show when you set that expectation early on, you tend to have much better outcomes. So we want to make sure we do that. We want to make sure that our expectation is about 3 to 4 weeks for return to work. And again, we're not directing care. We're not making a mandate. We're just saying that's the typical. That's what we're trying to shoot for. That's our goal. So if we're all shooting for the same goal, we may not hit it, but at least we're all on the same page. And if there's going to be a barrier or some sort of obstacle at the beginning, we're aware of it, and we can manage to it beforehand instead of being reactive. That's the first step, right? Setting goals, setting expectations. Second step, as I talked about, if you're going to get someone back to work, you need to know what they do for work, right? So first, we're going to start by entering the job title, which we showed you already when we're trying to get the duration. But let's go a step further. Great, the registered nurse. But what does that mean? What does a registered nurse do? What are the physical demands of a registered nurse? Well, if I click on that last tab here where it says job profile, let me click on it now, it'll show me just that. It'll give me a job description, and it'll show me all the physical demands of a registered nurse. So you can see here, here's the description, and then here's all the physical demands. So this is for a typical registered nurse. It's going to lay it all out for you. And now I know not only that this person's a registered nurse, but they're required to pull up to 21 pounds, pinch, lift up to 21 pounds. It gives me all the physical demands of this particular job. And this is really helpful, right? Because if the treating provider or any of the stakeholders, if we're going to try to get this person back to work, we need to understand how their injury impacts their functions. They can't go back to work with a back sprain if they're not able to lift or carry 18 pounds. So if the provider feels that that back sprain, they should hold off on lifting more than 15 pounds or carrying more than 15 pounds, well, then they can't do their job. You can customize this. So again, this is for a typical registered nurse, but maybe you're someone like myself. I'm a registered nurse, but I don't do what a typical registered nurse does, right? So you can customize this so that it reflects exactly what the claimant that you're working with does for work. You can edit the description. You can edit any of the physical demands. Oops, except the cookies, I guess. Or maybe you're not really familiar with what they do enough and you don't feel comfortable editing it. I kicked myself out of it. Sorry about that. You can share it with the employer. Right here. So by sending it to the employer, what you're doing is allowing the employer to edit the job description. So it's a really useful tool. Again, that's the second step in the three-step process. First step, set expectations. Second step, define what they do for work. And then third step is, okay, now we know how long it should be. We know what they do for work. But now we want to communicate. The third step is collaborating with the stakeholders, right? We want to reach out to the treating provider and say, hey, can this person go back to this job? Or is there something else this person can do as they continue to recover? And to do that, we have this return to work prescription form. I can see it either here in the timeline here, or if I click on print, I can see it there as well. Either way, when I click on it, it's going to bring me to the same exact place, which is this form here, that allows me to enter some information. And again, whatever I enter here is not being transmitted to ODG. It stays on my machine. You see it's going to pull in the date of entry for me. If I had the surgery date, it would pull that in for me as well. In the comments, hi, Dr. Smith, thanks for speaking to me earlier today. Or we have some CAN language you can use. Or maybe you can start with our CAN language and sort of refine it to whatever you're needing for that particular claim. Again, set expectations. We're by default going to provide that target return work date and duration in days. If you want to add the average, you certainly can. We have some scenarios if we wanted to add, we can do. There's restriction activity modifications. Or if you had, say, a peer review or an IME and they provided these, you can copy out that report and paste it in here. Otherwise, you can use what we have. And again, that job description. And this one, I'll also include the diagnosis, and I'll click print. So what this is going to do is going to create a PDF document for me that I can now share with the treating provider. In this case, hey, Dr. Smith, your patient John Doe is a registered nurse. This is the description, and I forgot, sorry about that. I changed it to sedentary. I didn't put it back to registered nurse, sorry about that. But whatever you have there, that description will go in this box here. It'll give you, again, those comments that you entered, giving the target return to work time frame, recommendations for activity modifications, and of course, a place for the provider to sign off on. It also gives you a second form, this job function evaluation form. Reason being, this first form is great if it's pretty straightforward claim, and it says, hey, Dr. Smith, can they do this, right? Well, the second form says, hey, Dr. Smith, what can they do? So it kind of puts the ball in their court. It says, so the provider can now go through and say, well, you know what, they can sit 6 hours a day, or 6 hours a day. They can stand 4 hours a day, and so on. They can go through and delineate each function separately so that they can send it back to you, of course, sign it, send it back to you. Now you can work with the employer to see if they can accommodate a position within those activity modifications. And that's really the goal, right? The goal is to get someone back to work. We know the sooner we get them back to work, within reason, of course, the better the outcome typically is. So the last thing to show you for the duration tab is the sort of the referential content. Now we have it in a few different sort of flavors, if you will. One is we have the Medline Plus links. So I added another one here to see even when there's multiple conditions, you still have the ability to select out the Medline link. When you click on this, you'll see it gives me the different conditions. So in this case, let's go ahead and, since I added carpal tunnel, I'll click on carpal tunnel. And you'll see this brings you out to the U.S. National Library of Medicine. It's a great resource. It's validated, it's peer-reviewed. So you can look at this. This is a great high-level information on the condition, typical symptoms, typical treatments, typical things to be aware of, so that you can also share this with the claimant, with the employer, with anyone, or maybe just for yourself. Maybe it's not a condition you're very familiar with. This will give you some good high-level information about that condition. So again, great resource to use. And then the other thing we have are these sort of animated videos. So in this case, you'll know there's a video because you see this little thumbnail here. When I click on it, and it tells me actually this one I have two because I have the two conditions here. So I'll click on the one for carpal tunnel again, click play. And I like to joke with people, you're not going to be able to, cure cancer or perform brain surgery watching these, but it will give you a nice high-level information about the conditions so that you're better informed. And again, you can share these with the claimant so that they're better informed. Informed claimants tend to have much better outcomes, if not just for having a better understanding what's going on with their body based on the type of injury or illness, but because if something's not consistent with what they're aware of for that condition, they can raise that with their treating provider sooner than later. It might be something unrelated. They maybe have something else going on. But either way, the sooner the provider knows about that, the sooner they can start treating it, the sooner that claimant gets better. So don't underestimate the power of information. And again, informed claimants have better outcomes. So use this to your advantage. Share this content with those claimants, whether it be through the video, send the link to them, or again through Medline Plus, send the link to the content for there. So that is it for the Durations tab and the Job Profile tab for that matter. So we kind of talked about durations. We talked about job profile. We talked about managing return to work. We're going to skip treatment for a second. I'll go back to that. But I want to kind of relate this duration to cost. Now, the costs are a great tool for projecting or benchmarking a typical cost for a claimant that you're working with. What I mean is, in this one, you have a 55-year-old registered nurse. Oh, we're going to read it, change that. Let's leave for now. That has carpal tunnel syndrome and a back sprain in California. And saying, well, the projected cost for a typical claim, or the A value, is about $44,000. If we got them back to work closer to the best practice, about 15 or just under 16. And again, at that max, at 100%, it's about 100,000. So you can use this to sort of gauge cost savings as well as predicting or projecting costs, whether you're setting reserves, you're trying to project medical costs, indemnity costs, or other expenses, or you're trying to capture cost savings, meaning if the typical cost is here and I was able to get them back to work here, well, then I saved about $30,000, right? That's a cost savings based on the work that you've done. And it's a byproduct, right? The goal is never to necessarily save money per se. It's a nice byproduct of doing what's right for the claimant. If doing what's right for the claimant is getting back to work timely, then the byproduct of that is saving on that claim. The costs are broken up in 3 buckets. We have wage replacement, which is indemnity, of course. We have the medical and sort of the other expenses. Medical is kind of what it sounds like. It's everything medical. It's physical therapy, office visits, injections, medications. Anything that's medical related will fall into that middle bucket. Other expenses are typically legal costs, translation, transportation, copy fees, all those sort of non-medical related costs would go in that last bucket. And indemnity, of course, is indemnity, and that's based on the state. So in this case, because we picked California, it's using the TTD rules for California to help me gauge that indemnity cost. So it's the min, the max, the percent, all that good stuff. But it's also using the average weekly wage for the state. So if I don't enter the claimant's actual average weekly wage, it's going to use the state's average weekly wage. So because of California, it's based on that. If I do have the claimant's actual average weekly wage, I can enter it here, and you'll see it updates that because now it's going to use the TTD rules for California. But for the average weekly wage, it'll use the claimant's actual average weekly wage, and of course now you get much more accurate projections. Again, the more information you tell the system, the more information it tells you, or more accurate information it tells you. Again, like any other tab, you can copy URL so you can come back to this exact spot with the exact information you have here, and you can print the page. So that's duration, job profile, and cost. Now let's start going into treatment. Let's start with TAL because it's sort of a mixture of claim and treatment, sort of in the middle, if you will. So what it does is, and let's just use the back sprain for now. What it's doing is it's saying for any back sprain claim, these are all the treatments you can expect that you may see, right? And it's ranking them on frequency from most frequently performed to least frequently performed. So it's giving you an idea of sort of standard of care, treatments that are typically associated with that condition, and the frequency of which you see those treatments. Again, most frequent to least frequent. Knowing that frequency doesn't necessarily mean appropriate, it just means it's frequent. Appropriateness comes a little down the road here in this payment flag area. We have 4 payment flags, green, yellow, red, and black. Green and yellow are supported. Red and black we recommend for review. So the difference between green and yellow, green has evidence-based support. So we talked about those 300,000 abstracts and all those new articles and all that research we do for evidence-based medicine. Those are the green flags. The trouble, though, is there's just not enough evidence-based medicine out there, right? There's no one doing really random controlled trials for ice packs. But especially for back sprains, we know it's done frequently, it's relatively low cost, and it's associated with a good outcome. So we kind of call that a data-driven approval. And that's those yellow flags. It's saying while there may not be a lot of evidence base to support it, the data supports it. So we're going to give it a yellow flag. Green is evidence, yellow is data. Red and black now is that there is no evidence base to support it, or that treatment may not be always recommended for that condition. So an MRI is a great example. An MRI may be supported for a back sprain claim, but typically not. So that's why it's red. Red means route for review. It means that may be appropriate if certain conditions are met. Recommend looking at to see if those conditions are met before approving something like that. And then black, I don't know if there's here's one. Black means typically it's never appropriate for that condition. Doesn't mean never, it just means not typically. Whereas red is usually there's some conditions that should be met first. Black is there's really no conditions that should be met, so there might be a unique circumstance that would support that otherwise. So that's the sort of COW index. This is where we're at now, treatment, analyzer, and outcomes. And it kind of is what it sounds like. It's analyzing the outcomes of treatments, and the better the outcome, the better the index score. That's what I'm getting at now, which is this last column right here. And you can see these numbers here in this column, COW index. The score, again, goes from negative 100 to positive 100. That's something you have to memorize. If you hover over anyone, it tells you that. It says, hey, this is measuring outcomes, negative 100 to positive 100. The positive number means a better outcome. Negative number means not a better outcome, or worse outcome, right? Your goal, obviously, is to use treatments that kind of correspond with a better outcome. So, for instance, if I look down the road here and I'm looking at, I don't know, like this one here, MRI, says it's a negative tau score of negative 23, and I look right above it. This X-ray has a positive score of 33. So tell me that back sprain claims that have this type of treatment tend to have better outcomes, and outcomes, of course, mean return to work, right? So the ones that return to work timely have better scores, and then the back sprain claim that has a negative 23 for the MRI meant that the claims that had this type of treatment tended to go back to work beyond the duration, beyond the expectation, hence the negative score. So this is a great tool. You can sort of, if you are coming into a claim 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks down the road, come into the tau, type in the treatments they've had to date, and then average the tau. If it's a positive average, you're probably on a good approach. If it's a negative average, you want to reach out to the treatment provider and see what's going on. As this is really based on the diagnosis, you may have the wrong diagnosis here. Maybe perhaps it was no longer a back sprain, now it's a herniated disc. You're going to want to update that diagnosis then, because that will change the recommendations and the tau index scores. So it's really important that you have the right information there. Last thing on this page to show you is that if you click on any one, it gives you just a little bit more information on each one, the average number of visits, the cost per visit, and so on. Next is the treatment tab. So the treatment tab is now strictly treatment. So even though we have back sprain up here, when we do a treatment tab search, we're looking for treatments. So I don't want to look for a back sprain. I want to look at a treatment for a back sprain. So I may want to type in MRI. I can look at the MRI entries. I may want to sort it by body part. I may just want to see the recommended treatment. So you can see how easy it is to sort of filter in and find exactly what I'm looking for. And then get that sort of top-down approach where I get the high-value information right in front, right up top. I want to see it right away. But if I want to get in more information, I want to get more granular, more depth to it, I can. I can drill down into there. I can tell right away, though, that an MRI is conditionally recommended. Why? Because I see it right here. So each one of these circles stands for something, and I know I kind of, let me just go back here so you can see more circles there. So you can see CR is conditionally recommended. There's a green circle that says R, which is recommended. There's NR here, which stands for not recommended. And then O is for other. There's one more as U for under study. So, and again, you don't have to memorize that, because if you take your mouse and you hover over it, it gives you a description of it. So the filters that we talked about, you can filter by recommendation. You can filter by category. And you can filter by body system. So in this case, I start with MRI, and I said, well, now I don't want just any MRI. I want an MRI of the low back. And I don't want a standing MRI. I just want to see what ones are appropriate. I don't want to see all the different types of MRIs. I just want to see the ones that are recommended. So as you can see, by doing that, I'll be able to filter down my list pretty significantly and quickly find what I was looking for. Now, when you want to see the actual content of the treatment summary, I click on it, and it brings me into the treatment summary itself. Now, every treatment summary, doesn't matter which one you look at, will always have at least the same 6 core components. Some will have more, but at its core, every one you look at will have at least these 6 core components. The first being the name of the treatment. The second being the body system it's associated with. The third is the treatment type. The fourth is the recommendation. The fifth is the evidence summary. And the sixth is all the way down the bottom right-hand corner. The last time that particular treatment guideline was reviewed and or updated. Now, some will also have some additional components, such as related topics field. They'll expand on the recommendation with a recommendation statement to give you a little more clarity around why they recommended, or some clarity around what it means to be conditionally recommended. The conditionally recommended tend to have these blue boxes, and that's sort of like the patient selection criteria, or the conditions in the conditionally recommended. So what are the conditions to make it recommended? These are what they are. The other thing is, a lot of folks, may or may not care about, how do we come up with this recommendation? Do we just have a bunch of folks in the back room pulling things out of a hat? Well, we're going to make this one recommended, or make this one not recommended. No, again, this is based on thousands of hours of research every year that go into these. And all of that research is sort of synthesized and summarized for you in this evidence summary here. So you don't have to go do the research yourself. You certainly could. And you'd see the same information we looked at, but we've done it for you. But if you did want to see pieces of that information, or how do we come up with that particular part of the summary, we give you links. So you can see here, if I click on any one of these, like for instance this one, it tells me this is the title of that reference, here's the citation, here's the ranking, right, the rating. So this is a 3A. So this is a relatively high-ranked, high-quality study, and that gives me the PubMed ID. So I can actually pivot out to the National Clearinghouse of Medicine, the U.S. Special Library of Medicine's Clearinghouse for guidelines, PubMed, right? And it gives me a copy of the abstract of that article that was used. So you can see exactly what the editors saw, the abstract, of course. They have the full article, but you can see the abstract of that, so you can see and sort of do your own research, if you will. But again, you don't have to because it's all done here for you, and the citations are all given to you as well as the rating. And then last thing to show you is sort of an extension of the treatment tab, which has, again, all those treatment guidelines, is the formulary. So that's the last thing for today is the formulary, which is really just an extension of the treatment guidelines. The formulary just puts it in a sort of table for you, makes it really, again, high value information quickly in front of me. That's what we're doing. We're giving you the drugs separately and telling you whether they're Y or the N. Y means there is evidence-based to support it. It's a first-line drug. It's recommended. It's safe and effective. So Y has those guidelines, says, yes, use me. N doesn't mean no. It just means, hey, the guidelines don't recommend typically using this one. We're going to need to do a review. So I like to think of it as Y means yes, N means needs review. Remember, never say no. There may be a perfectly good reason to give that medication. It's not a typical case, not a typical reason. So it's good to look at it and make sure that we're giving that patient the right medication, giving them the best treatment possible for their situation. Any one of these drugs can be expanded on. I simply just click on it. It'll give me any treatment summaries that may be associated with it. So for gabapentin, I see there's one from the low back chapter, the one from the pain chapter. I also see all the different NDC codes that roll up into it. And just like the durations tab, I get a click out to a Medline Plus, which gives me that information on that particular medication, as you can see here. So again, great resource, not only for you if you're not familiar with the medication, but to share with your claimants. Let them know what kind of medications they're taking, what kind of things they should be looking out for, and all that good stuff. I just realized I kind of skipped over an important piece, right? It's kind of just giving you the layout of the formulary tab. So this is sort of, again, in the table. The first one is the drug class. We have the generic name, the innovator brand, the notes, which I'll come back to in 1 second. Generic equivalent, yes or no. Is there a generic available, yes or no. Status, which we talked about, and then a benchmark cost. It's not always a specific cost, but it gives you an idea of the typical cost for that type of medication. And notes, some drugs are used for more than one indication. So for instance, Wellbutrin, well, if I look at the note column, something was being used for mental disorder, it's a Y. What's being used for pain treatment, it's an N. And then last thing for today is the MED calculator. Allows us to compare apples to apples. Not every opioid is the same potency, the same strength. In order for us to gauge the risk of that dose, we can use the MED calculator, which stands for morphine equivalent dose. It is what it sounds like. It's comparing each drug to morphine, sort of benchmarking against morphine. So for instance, for Vicodin, 30 is 30 because it's 1-to-1. Percocet is 1.5-to-1. Not something to remember because all I have to do is type in 30 of Percocet. Look, 45 MEDs. So it's going to add up the total for you and put it in a daily MED total. It's also, you see color coding. And if I scroll down with that, I see what each color means. So in this case, because I'm at 75, it's at extreme risk or red. And again, even if you're not a clinician, we're not talking about the actual dose. We're talking about the risk associated with the dose. What I mean is if someone's supposed to be returning the A value or even the B value for that matter is tomorrow, and I come in here and I use this tool and I see they're at extreme risk, well, it's very unlikely they're going back to work. So again, we want to make sure that they're using an effective use of opioids. They're getting documentation of functional improvement to justify the risk, and if not, working with the provider to see if there's a better treatment approach. So with that, that's all I have. I'll open up to Daphne and see if there's any questions or any feedback on anything we've covered so far, or today, I should say.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much. That was really thorough and excellent. We don't have time for too many questions, so I'm just going to ask you a couple here. And if there's anyone who we don't get to your question, we can email you following the presentation and get back to you. Let's see. I'm going to bring up our ending slide here with our contact information. And let's see, Jamie. Can we customize the data within the ODG by MCG platform?
Yes. So everything that you see is either customizable or configurable. The difference being configurable meaning everything you see we can either show or not show. So it's more of a configuration thing. And we started seeing customizable as maybe there's not something we have that you need for your organization. We can build it out for you. So the answer is yes, that we can customize and configure. The good thing is configuration we can usually do in a few minutes, and customization is really based on what the customization is for, but it can also be done pretty quickly.
All right, great. And does the new interface offer deep linking by diagnosis code and single sign-on?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so whoever asked that was good. So the greatest, most efficient way to use ODG is by integration, pulling this information out of ODG and putting it into your system. With that being said, we do have deep linking where you maybe start in your system, or you click on a button and it brings you right into ODG, into that sort of place. So for instance, if we had maybe you're working with a claimant and you wanted to deep link into that same claimant with a back sprain, it's sort of like that copy URL where you click on a button in your system and they'll bring you into ODG right to the place with that diagnosis, the conditions, the comorbids, all there. So yes, the answer is absolutely yes.
All right. Do you integrate with any claim software?
Yes, and in fact, if not all, certainly most of the, especially the larger software vendors out there, we have a whole program called OSAP, which is all around finding partnerships, strategic partnerships, and integrating. So yes, we integrate with many software providers, as well as many proprietary or homegrown vendors, or your own, a lot of large state funds and a lot of our large CPAs and managed care companies. We also integrate with their platforms.
All right, great. And I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we better sign off so people have time to get to their next meetings. How does the licensing work, and how much does it cost?
So that's great. I always like to joke, though. They don't like to trust me with the money, so I don't know exactly how much things cost, but I can tell you that licensing is typically done in an enterprise model. So what I mean is you're not really paying on a user basis, like you go and pay for a ticket for one person to get in a theme park, if you will. It's based on your organization. So if you have a total of 10 claim staff, then it would be, the license will be for 10 folks. But feel free to reach out to ODG. Daphne will provide you with the information on how to get subscription information, so you can reach out to us and we can help you with that.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot, Jamie, and thank you, everyone, for attending. You can email us at odghelp, H-E-L-P, @mcg.com, or give us a call at 1-800-488-5548 if you have other questions. And also, if we had any questions that we didn't get to, we will follow up with you following the webinar, and you will receive a recording of this webinar within 1 week. So thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.